Hello, everyone. Welcome to day two of our international conference on countering narco-terrorism. I welcome you all to the session four, the Golden Triangle: Opium, synthetic drug expansion, and regional security. I'm Rajas Purandare, a researcher at Indic Researchers Forum, and I'll be your host for this session. It is my privilege to introduce our session chair, Dr. Harjit Sandhu sir. Sir is a senior Indian Police Service officer who served as a police chief in insurgency affected areas of Manipur, commanded a Manipur Rifles battalion, and handled high profile cases with Central Bureau of Investigation. He has held senior international assignments with Interpol and United Nations Security Council, including as a coordinator and spokesperson for the UN sanctions panels on arms trafficking and conflict financing. A recognized expert on financial crimes and counterterrorism, he has advised UN bodies and co-authored a widely used report on hawala and money laundering with Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Before I hand over to the session chair, I would like to request the audience to please turn off their microphones and address all of their questions in the chat box, which will be taken at the end during the Q&A session. With this, I request Harjit Sandhu sir to take over this session. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rajas, for the introduction. And it's good. My privilege to welcome you all the participants, to this session 4. Good morning, good afternoon to all the distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, and participants, depending on wherever you are. Good morning or good afternoon. I'm honored to serve as the chair for this important and timely discussion on the Golden Triangle, opium, synthetic drug expansion, and regional security. The Golden Triangle has long been a focal point in global narcotics production, historically associated with opium cultivation. However, in recent years, the region has undergone a significant transformation, emerging as a major hub for synthetic drugs, particularly methamphetamine. This shift has far-reaching implications, not only for public health, but also for governance, conflict dynamics, transnational crime, and regional security. Today's session brings together a distinguished panel of experts who will help us unpack these complex and interconnected issues from multiple perspectives. And for a chair, the job becomes very easy when you have a really distinguished panel of experts, so I will leave most of the technical things to them to speak. Each expert will have approximately 15 minutes to convey their messages. Now, coming to the yesterday's discussions which we had, that clearly emerges that the scale, sophistication, and global reach of the narco-terror ecosystem is very wide. From the Golden Crescent's deep entanglement of drugs, militancy, and terror financing to the vast cocaine networks of the Indies and the rise of synthetic drug economies driven by powerful cartels in Mexico, we see a common thread. That is, illicit economies are no longer local or regional, but they are truly transnational in nature. These networks thrive on porous borders, exploit financial systems, and increasingly intersect with insurgency, organized crime, and geopolitical instability, reminding us that narco-terrorism today is not just a law enforcement challenge, but a defining security threat of our times. Now, once the drug traffickers, they have created money, generated money, the first thing they do is they have to move it from that spot. And then they have to make it legitimate. So what they do that through formal banking channels, through non-banking channels like physical smuggling or use of informal banking systems, that is hawala type systems everywhere they are there, or sometimes they use NGOs and even charities also. We can speak for hours together on that only. So these, they generate the drug trafficking profit is roughly around $500 billion annually. So you can imagine that much amount of money which has to be moved from one place to another. So to do that, they invest in every other legitimate business. And to do that in real estate business is relatively quite easy. Once that is done, it is almost impossible to identify drug proceeds. The real battlefield is not only on the borders, it is within the financial systems that sustain these networks. Today, in this current session, we'll broadly explore the role of conflict economies and political instability, particularly in Myanmar, the structure and reach of transnational trafficking networks, the involvement of organized crime and financial systems, including money laundering, the implications for regional and national security, especially for India's economy, and the critical human dimension, including forced migration, refugee vulnerability, and addiction. To begin today's session, we turn first to the situation in Myanmar, where conflict and illicit economies are deeply intertwined. Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan will help us understand how ethnic armed groups and ongoing civil war dynamics continues to shape narcotics production in the region. To give introduction of General Chauhan, it will take me hours together, but I will try to make a little brief introduction. General Chauhan is a highly decorated Indian Army officer commissioned into 11 Gurkha Rifles in 1979. Over a distinguished four-decade career, he commanded key formations including the 8th Mountain Division and a Strike Corps, and served as Director General of Assam Rifles. As chairman of the Ceasefire Monitoring Group, he played a pivotal role in reviving peace talks in northeast India, including bringing NSC and Kaplan Group back to negotiations. He holds a PhD from Punjab University and is also the author of Bridging Borders. Above all, he's my good friend, and our association goes back all the way to 1990s when we both were in a highly sensitive region of Manipur, that is Ukhrul district, tackling insurgency together. Over to you, General Chauhan, as the first panelist to enlighten us on the subject of conflict economies in Myanmar, role of ethnic armed groups, and civil war and narcotics. Over to you, General Chauhan.
Thank you so much, Harjit. Always such a pleasure to have you introduce me. My mind goes back to the 1980s and 90s when I was a company commander and you were the SP of Ukhrul. Ukhrul at that time was the most disturbed place in the Northeast, and the center of the insurgency because of the NSC and IM connection. And it has remained so, being a pivotal district in Manipur. And Ukhrul itself is actually borders the Somra tracts as well as the Chin districts of Manipur. And that's the place from where I should start the beginning of my talk. So what should be clear is that India shares a 1,663 kilometer porous border with Myanmar across 4 states. If you go from the north, it's the Arunachal Pradesh, the 4 districts of Arunachal Pradesh, where we still have the Armed Forces Special Powers Act in location. Then you go south of Arunachal Pradesh, is the entire state of Nagaland, which is the home to 16 major Naga tribes. And of course, the place of contest for all the insurgency that is there. You go south, you have the state of Manipur, which has been in the news over the last 5 years, mainly because of disturbances caused due to the ethnic strife between the Meiteis and the Kukis, and now of course the Tangkhils from the Ukhrul district have brought the situation back by adding their own bit to plan this conflict against the cookies. In fact, this my mind goes back, Harjit, if you remember that in the early 90s, the Tankuls were again after the cookies at that time, and we were busy protecting the cookies in Tukrul. So it's a strange situation. More things change, the more they remain the same. I have spent, as you say, 4 decades of my life fighting this insurgency. And I remember when I brought Khango across after breaking the NSC and Kaplang group, the first question was I asked Khango was, Khango, till what time will you continue this battle? And he says, till my people are united. And that's not going to happen. Not in his lifetime, not in our lifetime. There is no way the international boundaries of these states are going to break. So we should look at the continuous division here. But I always like to start with across the border. I always like to start with geography. And let me give you an idea about geography. Which are the critical states opposite India? The Kachin state is opposite Arunachal Pradesh. And the Sagaing region is opposite Nagaland and Manipur. The Chin state is opposite Mizoram. And the Rakhine state, of course, connects the Bay of Bengal. That is the Kaladhan route where we were planning the multimodal project. What are the geographical realities of this place? So that people have an idea sitting in Delhi. Very dense jungles. You can barely see maybe a meter ahead of you. Am I right, Harjit? Just a meter ahead.
Yes, please. That's
very difficult terrain, difficult mountains, minimal border fencing, and the ethnic continuities. And the Nagas, as I told you about the story with Khango, Nagas are on both sides of the border. The Kukis are on both sides of the border. The Chins are on the both sides of the border, and and the Mizos, of course. But I must tell you that the Chins are the Chinzo people, who are also the Mizo people. So the Chins are related to the Mizos as being the same tribe. Kukis are also Chins. They are also the Chinzo people. So in reality, the Kukis, Chins, and Mizos belong to the same tribe, and that's what causes the confusion at the larger level, because people often mistaken the Kukis to think that they're a vulnerable community, which they're not, because they have a state opposite them. They have a state within the Indian Union, and they were called Kukis by the British only because this part of the Chin people were living in Manipur. The borders here are politically defined, but what is important is they are socially porous, not just ethnically porous, so socially porous. People have been moving up and down, people have settled, and almost all the tribes in the northeast have at one time or the other moved in from Myanmar. So Myanmar remains the motherland for all these tribes that now inhabit the northeast. And what does this geography say? It creates natural sanctuaries. It creates smuggling routes because of firstly, the tribes on both sides. Secondly, the minimal fencing. Thirdly, the free move regime, which earlier was 16 kilometers, now it brought down to 10 kilometers. And the fourth, as Harjit and me have often seen, the insurgent mobility groups. These insurgent mobility routes were across the border, and these insurgents used to always have camps on the other side, which we could never reach because it was a different country. And regardless of whatever the situation was, regardless of all the pressure and all the effort we put in, as in the Assam Rifles, I was at that time in a Gorkha Rifles unit, 611 Gorkha Rifles. We put in a lot of effort, but you could never sort of stop the insurgent movement, mainly because the people are the same. So what I want to say is that the India-Myanmar border is not a hard boundary. It is a living, breathing continuum of terrain, tribes, and trade, where conflict actually flows more easily than control. It's an important thing to understand that it's not a boundary. It is just a continuum of terrain, continuum of tribes, continuum of trade, because free move regime goes on. And conflict is something that has been there since time immemorial. But let me come down to now bring it down to the 2021 Myanmar military coup, where the Myanmar armed forces took over the government from Aung San Suu Kyi. From that time onwards, Myanmar started descending into fragmentations. They were always fragmented. There were always a large number of insurgencies. But from that time onwards, a larger number of insurgencies happened. And these armed actors not only were armed and acting as insurgent groups to protect what they called their communities, but they were also operating as economic entities. And what is our linkage? This instability impacted on India's northeast due to the geographical proximity and, as I said, the ethnic overlap. I remember, talking about this to the then Chief Minister of Mizoram, Mr. Lalthan Haula, when I was the Director General of Assam Rifles, and he said, General, these are my people. The Chins are my people. Our sacred forests are there. Our sacred stones are there. Our cousins are there. So we are part of this community. There is no way I can stop the Chins from entering Mizoram. So that is something that we have to be very clear about, that we cannot stop this movement taking place unless the local people help us, and the local people simply will not help because they have relations on both sides of the border. Now, let me talk about conflict economy framework. What are the revenue streams? Harjit spoke about it: narcotics, resource attraction, informal taxation. So in many ways, this conflict itself is economically self-sustaining. And these networks, in India's northeast, extend seamlessly into India's border regions. So these networks in Myanmar are seamlessly networked into India's border regions. We talk of the EAOs, Harjit mentioned that, but what are EAOs really? Economic and strategic actors. And the main armies, as we call them, or main groups, are the Kachin Independence Army, the state of Kachin, which borders Arunachal, the United Wa Army, and the Karen National Union, the Chin National Army. They control immense number of natural resources. They control immense number of weapons, and their role as EAOs is the control of territory, trade, and taxation. In fact, the recent experiment or a recent arrest of an American, Van Dyke, and 6 Ukrainians, and one more, I think he was they were arrested because they had gone in to help the EAOs inside Myanmar. Whether those EAOs were operating against India or not, we are not very sure, though the FIR has been listed as that. But they were definitely helping the Kachin Independence Army and the United Wa Army in training them, giving them weapons to do what? To continue this control of territory, to continue this illegal trade, and to continue this illegal taxation. That's an important aspect. Another aspect that you must understand, another international aspect, is the Chinese international aspect. China maintains ties with Tatmadaw and these EOs. It should be very clear to us that these economic and strategic actors get their weapons, get economic help from the Chinese. And China not only gives it to them, they also give it to the Tatmadaw, which is the Myanmar National Army. And the United Wa Army, or the USWA, is linked undoubtedly to the Chinese origin weapons. And probably now they were trying to go further and get weapons from Ukraine and many other European countries, where now weapons are freely available. So the takeaway from this is Myanmar's borderlands are zones of competing influence, not state control. These are the issues. There's competing influence. There's no state there. The state doesn't exist, and that is why we've not been able to take out the insurgent bases in Myanmar, because there is no state control at all. Now, what is this narcotics economy like? Myanmar is actually equal to the Golden Triangle hub. States like Manipur and Mizoram are both transit and consumption zones, and the addiction cases in addiction, HIV, criminal network cases are rising in these states. The China link is very clear. The precursor chemicals made to bring in, I mean, that are used to base to bring in these drugs are linked to Chinese supply chains. There's just no doubt about it. The Tatmadaw is also an economic actor. Not only just is it the Myanmar National Army, it is also an economic actor. And it also uses militias and ceasefires tactically. It's another issue that you have to understand. So the Chinese have a simultaneous engagement with both the state and the North state actors. Now, I clearly remember I was a chairman, I was the Director General of the Assam Rifles. I'd gone to Myanmar to attend the national level meeting there, where the Home Minister of Myanmar came up to me and told me that we have a common enemy, China. So they're aware that Chinese are their enemy, yet they link up to them continuously. China operates on both sides because they have the ability to operate on this. But what has this civil war done? It has fragmented this whole issue. And the rise of People's Defense Forces, as they say, and absolute collapse of governance. There's absolutely no governance of Myanmar on our side, on our borderlands with Myanmar. The border has become, over the last 5 years, more porous and less governed. There's no sight of the Myanmar army at all. Earlier, there used to be. Let me tell you about the Kaladan project vulnerability. Why does it matter? We were planning this Kaladan project because it connected Calcutta or Kolkata to Mizoram via Myanmar. And it bypassed the Siliguri corridor, which we take as a very critical vulnerability in us. But the vulnerability of this corridor was that it passes through the Chin and Rakhine conflict zones, the Chin state and the Rakhine state. And the threats were insurgents, there were also criminal networks. And add to it the Chinese angle, competing projects under their BRI. So our Kaladan project has become actually strategically exposed. One, because of the disturbance in Manipur, and secondly, because of the continued instability in Myanmar. And it is economically fragile. So at the moment, it is a no-go. It is because of these issues. And because of all this, also these issues, there is a refugee and social spillover. At the time when I went to the Chief Minister of Manipur in 2018, at that time there was about 15,000 refugees. Today there are 55 to 65,000 refugees in Mizoram, and they're feeling the pinch of this. So that's another important aspect, is that they do want their cousins to go back, but they don't have the capability to tell them. So here the effect is that ethnic solidarity is being affected, and the government is being strained to give food to an additional 65,000 people when there is no money for their own people. But the strategic risk for India, the extension of this Myanmar conflict system has entered India. And there is a narco-insurgency nexus, there's border instability, there is Chinese influence via proxies, and our infrastructure is severely vulnerable. And that is something we need to understand. We need to control this issue. But if we ourselves personally continue allowing political minor, not just minor, I would say criminal political elements to operate inside our border states, who are in league with these EAOs in Myanmar, we will have the same problem that Myanmar has: instability, lack of governance, and it being a basis for narcotics. We as a country have to understand that you have to have governance which works there. People have to understand that you are the government, and you have to have laws that work, and not no sign of governance at all. This secure borders that everyone says, why aren't you able to, as Director General Assam Rifles, talk about secure borders? We don't have a fence. At any rate, a fence there is. We built I think less than 60 kilometers. The fence has already been cut in about 5 to 6 places in Nagaland as well as in Mizoram. It will be cut in Manipur because tribes and their relatives are on both sides of the fence. So you need to bring technology here. I had taken to the Home Secretary, I remember a project called the Smart Fence, which involved technology and governance and policing on both sides. But I was unable to push it through, and so also have my successors. They've been unable to push this project through. We have to engage multiple actors in Myanmar, not just the Myanmar army. We have to engage all these EAOs. We have to protect our Kaladan project. We have to have a dedicated security grid. And unfortunately, we have to also compete with China and with both speed and local integration. These are imperatives, absolute imperatives, that if we don't do that, we're going to be in a problem. So geography is actually destiny here. We have to understand that, there's no running away from geography. There's no running away from the fact that what is happening there will not affect us. It will affect us. It has always affected us. It will affect us, and it will continue to affect us, because, like I said, it's a continuum. The tribes are this side and that side, and they're linked to each other. India's northeast is not just adjacent to Myanmar's conflict. It is geographically and economically entangled with it. That's the clear truth. And unfortunately, our politicians play on to this line. And it's a losing battle with them, because there will be always local issues, there will always be local problems, there will always be local grievances, and those local grievances become larger and larger. And because of the idea that there are weapons here, you have a lot of killing, you have a lot of problems, and these flames are fanned by these politicians who don't understand the damage they're doing to India's integrity. As a soldier, I can say that it's a difficult issue. The map, you just have to look at that map. That explains the problem. Borders are porous, conflict economies do not stop. They just change jurisdiction. So this is where I'll stop now. I'm ready for questions if anyone has. Thank you, Harjit, for the time that you've given me. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, General Chauhan. That is what I expected from you. Because I will touch on one before I move to Professor Rohan Gunaratna. You mentioned few things. People here sitting in Delhi or in power centers, they have no idea what is going on in Northeast. I give very quickly one example. I was talking to a very senior person, won't name, and was talking about Manipur on something, and Manipur, that is in Assam. So that is the level of knowledge here. So, and forget about Ukhrul, or if you start talking of Fungyar or Sangchuk or even that, then, so first they have to understand. That is where the role of people like you, they have to be properly used. They did try to use you in the peace negotiation with the NSC and one group and all, but again, those people who have no idea, if they are the ones who are calling the shots and don't understand the ground reality. Second, you raised it, the relatives on both sides of the border. That is a very big challenge, but we can use it as an opportunity also. I take you back to 1986, February. I went on an undercover operation using that only because my source had relatives on the other side of border. So he contacted his relative and he had a very good cover up. That was a highly successful drug operations, which ended up, we arrested 9 people. That was February 1986. And people here in 2026 don't know if Manipur is in Assam or is a separate state. Then second, porous border, because that again, even in Ukhrul, some of the villages we reach, we have to go via the Myanmarese territory. So you go there across. These are the things people need to understand. Again, from Ukhrul, I give example of Tasum Khulun. You mentioned Somra tract. No, when I went to that village, we had to drive the whole night and the next day, and somewhere we had to even create the rules, driving jeeps through the riverbed. And when I reached that village, they told me that was first time in their lives they were seeing a district level officer in that state, in that village, sorry. So that is the level, because that area has been totally left off. I will stop at that. So this definitely free movement regime has to be regulated. But at the same time, sometimes we have to also use it to conduct operations on both sides, which I did it. So let's see. And even on this, when Lal Denga, those with the Mizo National Front, the negotiation was going on. Coincidentally, in January 1986, I happened to be in Aizal and I shared the guest house with some of his commanders. So both of us know this conflict from those days onwards. The way from late 1980s onwards,
Oh, yeah.
but still, we are still there. Today, in 2026, we are still there. So I thank you
In
very
fact,
much. So,
I'd like to
yeah,
add, yeah, I'll just
yeah.
add one thing. When I was in Myanmar for the national level meeting, uh, and I was talking to them about 99% of the Myanmar government's problems were based on the illegal operations that they said were being carried out by the Indian Army and Assam Rifles. So I told them, I said, why don't we have joint operations, right? But what he told me was, during the meeting, they said, no, we can't have joint operations because it's against our law, it's against our constitution. But during the tea break, he comes up to me and he says, General, if you just say coordinated operations, we'll agree. So
Okay.
immediately
Yes.
after the tea break, I said, why don't we have coordinated operations? They said, yes. So from 2018 onwards, we started having coordinated operations with the Myanmar army. But unfortunately, after that, Myanmar army took over the country and this fragmentation has taken place. But otherwise, we started having this coordination with them. And we were able to bring this issue to some level, to some coherence.
Yeah.
That's a very major issue, Harjit. That
Yeah.
we've
Thank
been
you,
trying
General
our best.
Chauhan. I think we leave few things towards the end. So let us listen to the other experts. Both of us, we leave that part for we park it for the later part. So building on this, where we both are living. So we now move to the broader regional picture of organized crime. Professor Rohan Gunaratne will examine how criminal networks and money laundering mechanisms are strengthening and expanding the narcotics economy across the Golden Triangle. Professor Rohan Gunaratne is a globally recognized terrorism expert with over 30 years of experience in security studies. He is professor at the Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Singapore, and he heads the International Center for Political Violence and Terrorism Research. He has advised governments and trained elite agencies worldwide, testified before the 9 by 11 Commission, and authored over 20 books, including Inside Al Qaeda. And testifying before 9 by 11 Commission and association with that, that is where Professor Gunaratne shares the background with me, because I am also one of those afterwards. So over to Professor Rohan Gunaratne to speak on or enlighten us on organized crime groups, money laundering, and regional security dynamics in the Golden Triangle. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Indic Researchers Forum. I'm delighted to speak to all of you on three aspects that today affect the security of the Golden Triangle. And I want to first go to the aspect of aerospace weapons. Aerospace weapons are missiles, drones, and rockets. So you can place the category of projectiles that we have recently witnessed in the Middle East between Iran and their neighbors, as well as today, to this date, the battle is continuing between Lebanon and Israel. But if you ask me what is the theater where the largest number of drones have been used, it is not in the Middle East. It is in Myanmar. So with a colleague of mine in Myanmar, and he has maintained a very detailed database of incidents, I can share with you that hands of insurgent groups And many of these groups have built linkages to threat groups in India and also in Southeast Asia. So it is a major challenge for the security, not only of Myanmar, but the region. The threat of aerospace weapons will continue. It will not diminish. It is not terminal. And it is a threat all militaries and law enforcement agencies will need to prepare. But I also must tell you that most of the militaries, including the Indian military and the Chinese military and the other Southeast Asian militaries, are very poorly prepared for this threat. The second aspect I want to share with you is the illicit border trade, which includes drugs, both plant-based and synthetic drugs. Especially, we have seen a $60 billion methamphetamine trade, and this trade continues. We have seen some efforts to disrupt it, but it has not been very successful because the state authorities in some countries are complicit in it. Now, with regard to the most recent incident that received international attention, which is the Matthew Van Dyke incident, the best trainers for using drones are the Ukrainians. And that is why he came to India. And of course, he worked with the Chin state, one of the groups that is there. I can elaborate on it if there is interest. But let me very quickly move to the nexus between aerospace weapons and also the drug trade. The Americans have investigated, indicted, and even trapped a number of threat actors in Myanmar, that is transporting drugs, and in return they wanted firearms, weapons, mostly surface-to-air missiles. And this would have been a game changer. It is not that they didn't have surface-to-air missiles, but they wanted the most modern surface-to-air missiles. That is why I said that it would have been a game changer. It would have affected security in a very significant way. The main actors are moving and they are located in the Shan state. And they are mostly having networks into Thailand and also Laos. So the three main groups that were involved in the latest operation, Drugs for Weapons, was the Karen National Liberation Army, the Shan State Army, and the United Wa State Army. Now I come to the final part of my presentation, which is based on my own experience for many years of interviewing a number of insurgents and terrorists in the region. There are 6 groups that are currently active in Myanmar. The first is called ARSA. I have reviewed the debriefing of the leader of ARSA, that is the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. Of course, I have interviewed the earlier generation of the Rohingya groups, that is the RSO and the ARNO, the Arakan Rohingya National Organization and the Rohingya Solidarity Organization. Both these groups are still active, but to a lesser extent. The most active group is ARSA and led by Ataullah Abu Amr Jununi. He is now in custody. That is why I was able to see his debriefing. And of course, he is now been succeeded by the former spokesperson of his network called Sheikh Burhan. So they have built a network also in Southeast Asia. That is why I'm looking at them very closely. And historically, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the Arakan region, there is one network that operated. That is called HUJI, the Harkatul Jihadi Islami Bangladesh, Harkatul Jihadi Islami Pakistan, Harkatul Jihadi Islami Arakan. The anti-Soviet multinational Afghan Mujahideen campaign mobilized them, and they still maintain a very small presence, but a very important presence. During the period of our Nobel Prize winner, who was the interim leader in Bangladesh, very unfortunately, extremism grew very significantly. He's a brilliant man, but I think that he didn't know what Jamaat-e-Islami was doing. And during that period, we saw a huge rise of both Al-Qaeda, ISIS affiliated groups. And he didn't do much, although he was told what was happening in Bangladesh. Of course, the current government will take action, I have no doubt. But I want to share with you that the Islamist threat is also very significant. So about 80 to 90% of all the attacks globally is by Islamist groups. And this dimension is a very significant threat, although it is a small threat in the Golden Triangle. But the spillover effect or the nexus or the link is very significant. That is why it is so important for all of us to come together to fight this threat. So I have a model that I want to share with you. One is we have to work together with partners. We have to work together even with partners we don't like sometimes. Because in the larger interest of security, we have to shake hands with everyone. Otherwise, these non-state entities will grow in strength, size, and influence. And they will overwhelm the well-established states, both China and India, Thailand, and other countries. So the model I propose is that we have common databases and governments should share. What the Indians have, they should share with Bangladesh. They should share with Myanmar. They should share even with China because it's a bigger threat. Sometimes these threats, governments can't control it. You can see what happened to the Tamil Tigers in India. Ultimately, the Tamil Tigers that were harbored in India provided training, weapons, direction. First batch in Uttar Pradesh, in Chakrata, north of Dehradun, establishment 22, second batch in Himachal Pradesh, all the 8 batches in Tamil Nadu, including Danu, who killed Rajiv Gandhi, trained in Pindugal. So we have seen that it always comes to haunt you. And it has haunted you. And today, Pakistan is haunted by Tariq-e-Taliban Pakistan. It is the biggest and the most active terrorist group in the world today. If you look at the global terrorism index, there's no country that suffers more from terrorism than Pakistan. So even India and Pakistan should work together. But most Indians, even here, don't like it. Because they want to blame Pakistan for everything. So I think that it is high time for you to become mature and work with Pakistan also on the terrorism side. But here, going back to the Golden Triangle, work with even China, because you cannot control and contain what is happening in Myanmar, and it's going to affect both China and India in a very big way, because the territory controlled by Myanmar government is now very small, and it will become even smaller, and there'll be chaos in that country. More than 80 insurgent groups have become very powerful, and they're using these aerospace weapons to overwhelm the Myanmar government. Now, first is common database. Second is exchange personnel. Although there are difficulties and differences, important to exchange personnel between law enforcement, military, and intelligence services, and also across borders. Third is, of course, joint training, because joint training will lead to joint operations. When I first built in Singapore the International Center for Political Violence and Terrorism Research, I sent my head of training, Adam Dolnick, to all the 10 ASEAN countries. When he went to Myanmar, he told me that they recorded his 5-day training from 9 to 5. So I asked him why. He said that's the first counterterrorism training they received. So I think that you can afford to help Myanmar at this time. Geopolitics is different. Security threats is a bigger issue, a big challenge. So joint training will lead to joint operations. And finally, sharing of experience, expertise, and resources. And I think that there's nothing, no substitute to this, especially sharing of experience. But I think technology is very advanced today, and a little bit of technology can make a huge difference. So if you look at the traditional domains of war fighting, it is land, air, and maritime. Now we have added 2 others, cyber and space. But the 6th domain of warfare we have seen very clearly in the latest conflict, US-Israel versus Iran conflict, which is technology. If we don't build these capabilities, we cannot contain and rise to those threats that is going to affect us. I once again thank all of you for your participation, but I especially thank the Indic Forum for their leadership of organizing this very timely event so that we can all to work together to enhance specialist understanding within government. I think what the general told was correct. Many people do not know the threat. Second is, of course, raise public awareness. So I believe that Indic Researchers Forum has a major role to play in India and globally to raise that awareness and enhance specialist awareness of government, law enforcement, military, and intelligence services. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Gunaratna. As expected, you have covered more than what was thought of. And thank you so much for that. Really, it was very enlightening. And especially the use of drones in Myanmar is the maximum. I knew they were using, but for me also, this is a new thing to know that they rate higher than other countries we have. And some of these people who are those mercenaries, even in Africa, in Liberia, I came across some of those ex-military from Israel and all, those guns for hire and all. I think someday we can have a session on guns for hire also separately. Then we will cover on that. You touched on that. So really, it was very good. And as Indic, I have been associated with Indic from the early days, and we definitely are trying to spread awareness, not only in India, throughout. But what you said is, it is a very utopian question. I have tried to sell it a few times that we should work with all those who are also suffering from the effect of terrorism. You mentioned about Taliban, and we have many sessions in the past done on that part also. But let us hope that someday some of them can work together to tackle that. So thank you very much once again. So now we bring the focus closer home, looking at the implications for India. Ms. Rami Desai will discuss how narcotics trafficking intersects with insurgency and evolving security dynamics in India's Northeast. As I say, Northeast has been very dear to me. I spent the early part of my life there and was one of the, perhaps the still date, the only SP, Superintendent of Police in Tamenglong and Ukhrul, who has the record of visiting every village in the district. And I'm yet to know another person who has done the same. So, giving a little brief introduction about Madam Rami Desai. She is an author, anthropologist, and expert on Northeast India and regional security dynamics. Educated at King's College London, she has over 2 decades of research experience on insurgency, ethnic groups, and identity politics. She is a consulting editor at Global Order, a distinguished fellow at India Foundation, and a regular contributor to publications such as India Today Print and First Post. And I have listened to her a few times in the past, and I'm sure she will do full justice to this subject. Over to you, Rami Desai.
Thank you, sir. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, please carry on. Very clear.
All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. It, as usual, is an honor to be here again. I'm in the middle of shifting and there are so many things happening, but I can't say no to Yashas because, he's carried on this Indic Researchers Forum through the years so sort of in a disciplined way that it's incredible to see young people taking an interest. And of course, I've come out of my own greed to have the kind of co-panelists that I do. I've been making notes because I'm sure I'm going to learn so much more than I can offer. But because I have spent most of last year on the border and in Myanmar, meeting most of the stakeholders, including the Tatmadaw or the EAOs, including local bodies on the border, I may have a perspective that might interest some of our viewers. First of all, I think it's not lost on anybody, and as my previous panelists have made clear, that things are complex. I have never called myself an expert on the Northeast because you can't actually ever be an expert on the Northeast, But even for learners like me, it is very evident that things are very complex. When we talk about narcotics, we talk about insurgency. It was in 2023, after the clampdown on poppy cultivation in Afghanistan, that the channels found a ready-made system in Myanmar. And that's when it exploded onto our borders. They found a ready-made system of channels of methamphetamine trade, poppy cultivation, to the extent that it was so quick on the uptake in Myanmar that by UNODC numbers, there is now 2 times the amount of production that was happening in Afghanistan of poppy cultivation in Myanmar. The quality has also improved because they're using drip irrigation systems. Methamphetamine labs are no longer small shops. These are sophisticated laboratories. Their manufacturing capabilities are enormous. It is really difficult for us to figure out how much they're really manufacturing. What we know is by what we intercept that comes onto our borders in the Northeast. That also some are counted in kilograms, some are counted in the amount of pills. So there isn't like this, this exact number that we can have. But if you were just to take into consideration the kind of interceptions that Indian authorities have made, and usually people say that what is intercepted is 10% of what is really out there. It will be shocking. It was only 2 years ago that in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and I'm sure my co-panelists are aware of this haul, that was caught by the Indian Coastal Guards of methamphetamine tablets to the amount of $4.5 billion. There were about 6,000 tablets that were caught, and they had come in on just trawlers coming in from Myanmar. And this was using the sea route. Every single day, if you were to track newspaper reports, just that you would find that in Champhai district in Mizoram or in Manipur, you will find a couple of 100 grams being caught every single day. That just gives us an indication of how bad the situation is and how difficult it is going to be for us to control it, because as said by my previous panelists, that our borders are porous, and I've traveled end to end on these borders. I've seen the kind of, you can only be as good as the weakest link. So no matter how much you fence, no matter how much patrolling you have, locals possibly will just know better points. They'll be able to navigate these areas better. So it's going to be very difficult to man this. I happen to also be invited to Myanmar as an election observer, as an independent election observer. And one of the interesting things that I noted there was, out of 330 townships that they managed to go into elections for, there were about 64 townships that they didn't go because of the conflict. 60% of those 64 townships were across India's borders. That means that the majority of conflict that we have will be across India's borders, anywhere compared to anywhere else in Myanmar, meaning that those will be ungoverned areas. Those areas will be areas that will have groups that will be using the illicit economy to keep themselves afloat. How do you negotiate with them? It's really difficult. If you look at, let's say, the Chin groups, CNF, CB, are divided. Under them, there are over 16, 20 groups each. Who controls what? Who do you negotiate with? Who is the deciding factor? This is going to be difficult for us to manage. Apart from that, of course, some of the numbers that we are seeing should be alarming. 2025 UNODC shows a 17% increase in poppy cultivation. 2025 UNODC shows highest poppy cultivation in 10 years in Myanmar. 2025 opium output from Myanmar has already become 2 times of what it was from Afghanistan. And right now, what we know, seizures in India, the amphetamine seizures is 34 quintals in 2023 and 80 quintals recently. But that again is only a fraction. It only tells us how great the situation is. I happen to meet a lot of people when I travel, and I try to meet a varied kind of people, not just administration or officials or the government, but also local businessmen. I have an interesting story which I often like to tell to just show how quickly drugs are also changing shape. We used to know about yaba pills from the very beginning. We knew in the 70s also they were popular. They'd come with, they were pastel colored medicines and tablets, and they'd come marked with Y. But the last time I was there, I met this gentleman, and he was a businessman who dealt a lot with the Chinese. And I said, so, where do you guys meet? And they said, oh, we usually meet at bars for a drink, and these are private dinners, and things like that. I said, what do you drink with, your Chinese counterparts? I said, whiskey. I said, this. He said, yeah, usually it's that. But last time they gave me a glass of water. And I said, what do you mean a glass of water? He said, no, it was great, because it was odorless, and it didn't have any taste. It was just like water. But I danced. I danced for like 5 hours after that. And the next day I went, late at night, I went back home and I woke up my family and I told them, what am I doing all of this for? What can I gift all of you? And, they made a list of gifts, which he agreed upon. Next morning, he woke up. He said, I had no hangover. I had no recollection of promising any of these gifts. Of course, the gifts aside, which now he had committed to, what I found out was it was another type of drug called happy water. So happy water does exactly that. It's colorless, it's odorless, you drink it, anybody can give it to you. You don't remember what you've done, but you have bursts of energy. Uh, I just tell this story, not in jest, but to indicate that even the kind of new drugs that they are coming out with is going to be difficult for us to keep a track of. India has a burgeoning youth population. It is natural that it would be beneficial for them to sell it across the Indian borders. We know that the rate of HIV, whether it's intravenous use or other drug addiction, is the highest in states like Mizoram or Manipur, which has the most active transit routes, also from Myanmar, where drug trafficking happens from. So, when new drugs like this uh, are being trafficked, one can only imagine how ill-equipped we are in being able to tackle it, because we don't even know what they are. Also, to sort of keep credibility continued in drugs, the names or the markings on the drugs are being changed very, very quickly. So you see new and new producers, new and new drugs coming out, and you don't know what you can trust, what you can't. So this itself is going to have a huge impact um, on our young population in the Northeast. Of course, we also know that insurgency has been a problem. Transnational ethnic ties have at times facilitated this sort of
Um,
Ma'am, you're on mute.
got muted.
Sorry, I think I pressed something. My apologies. My previous speaker, Professor Gunaratna, spoke about drone warfare. Most of these groups have training subsections within them, the ethnic armed organizations. So they are way ahead of us. By most accounts, they have anti-drone systems as well, something that most militaries may not be equipped with. So, ethnic armed organizations have no dearth of money. They have conducive environment and atmospheres to keep them going. There is no, elections have happened, and sure, there'll be some amount of international legitimacy that will be accorded to the elections, but that does not mean that the conflict is going to die down anytime soon. There isn't umbrella entity that has a political roadmap for these ethnic armed organizations either. Of course, people quote the NUG, but that doesn't mean that the NUG has control. If you hear the Arakan Army, they'll talk about confederations. They'll talk about a different sort of a state. If you talk about some ethnic armed organizations, they'll speak about independence. Some will speak about a larger autonomy. So there isn't a real political roadmap ahead. And with the kind of money that is coming in through the narcotics trade, through the kind of weapons that we are seeing in these areas, I think the EOs have no reason to scale back their activities. So India has to be equipped. We have to really, just to start off with, even be aware. Like my chair said previously, that people don't even know much about the borders. And let me tell you, we are only right now talking about the northeastern border. The Bangladesh border is also a very active border. When we speak about methamphetamines, let me take your memory back to the time when Sheikh Hasina actually enacted the death penalty for traffickers because of the kind of methamphetamines that were being trafficked into Bangladesh and the kind of impact that it was having, not just on young and unemployed people, but people who were corporates or IT functionaries who had to work on two different times. So the combination of a lot of these methamphetamines was also codeine. So it kept them awake for 2 to 3 days on. The death penalty had to be enacted. Who were the traffickers? Largely the traffickers were the Rohingya groups who had access coming in, coming out. Recently, we've also seen the umbrella organization which has brought the four Rohingya groups together, which is called the Four Brotherhood Alliance. And allegedly they're being trained by ISI. So our borders are going to be very, very important. We don't have enough scholarship, we don't have enough interest, we don't have enough discussions like this. And that is primarily the reason that I put everything aside and I wanted to be here. The more we talk about it, the more interest that is generated, the more seriously people will take what is going to happen. I would just like to end by saying, and of course, I have so many other points, but I don't want to extend on the time that has been allotted to me. I would just like to end by saying that we have spoken so much about the Great Game West. I think what we are going to see is the Great Game East that is going to unfold before our eyes. We haven't even reached, and this is not the topic that is given to me, but I think we have to start digging deeper into even natural resources, critical earth mining. That is going to become one of the areas where China, India, and other international actors are going to go at head on. And that is going to have its own separate repercussions. I will end with that and I'll say thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rami Desai. Really, anything you say is coming from experience on the ground. And that is what I have been emphasizing. There is no dearth of tabletop experts nowadays. You know it in your field also and in some others. So you are the one who actually have been on the ground. And I have been following your writings and others, and you are actually witnessing it with your eyes, not by reading the newspapers or getting it from Google, Saint Google putting few things. You are actually talking to those people. So that really brings in a very good perspective coming, as they say, directly from the person who is on the ground. Really, thank you very much for these points that you raised. And now we move on to the next one. Next one is Mr. Ajmal Sohail, co-founder and co-president of Counterterrorism Alliance Germany. So he will trace how these substances to global markets. Mr. Ajmal Sohail will take us through the cross-border networks that sustain this illicit trade. Ajmal Sohail is an Afghan political economist, intelligence analyst, and counter-terrorism expert. He is co-founder and co-president of the Narco-Terrorism Alliance, CNT Alliance Germany, where he leads intelligence and security initiatives. He previously served as an economic advisor to the Vice Presidency of Afghanistan and has been actively in actions. So he holds degrees in terrorism and extremism studies from Leiden University, Netherlands. My house used to be 3 kilometers from that university when I lived there. So Mr. Sohail also holds degrees in, sorry, I already said that. He has also authored 3 books on liberalism and capitalism. He is affiliated with multiple policy and research institutions, including the Center for Strategic Research Diplomacy, Afghanistan, and the Institute for Counterterrorism Study. So he will be speaking on from production to international market. Over to you, Mr. Sohail.
Hi, good morning from Germany. So thank you very much for having me for today's session. It looks very incredible. I saw a lot of, academics and a lot of experts. So talking before such a panel, it's a little bit for me. How can I say it would be difficult. But by the way, I will try to shed lights from not from academic and research, rather from what I do it. Today or onward. So that would be like from the actionable intelligence collecting data analysis. That would be so. I may ask for to share my screen because I've prepared a presentation to just to be on the point and also to save some time. So I would like to share my screen and slide by slide we will I will walk you through, right?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Share. So how it works.
We can see you. Yeah, we see the slide. Okay.
Okay. You see the slides. Okay, wonderful. So what I was told about the Golden Triangle Nexus, so that's from production, trafficking, and transnational narco-terrorism networks. So this is, incredible topic, and it needs a little bit more time to dive deeper in it. So what I would like to talk about is the introduction, the context, and then the production landscape, then the cross-border trafficking routes, the transnational narcotics networks, and then state and non-state facilitation, financial flows, laundering channel, and security application and policy recommendation, and then would be a Q&A session for. So the first is I will start from the Taliban, from the post 2021 narco economy. A lot of people think that the Taliban when they returned to power, and they stopped the production, not only they banned the production and also the trafficking of that, but the landscape a little bit changed because they tried to prohibit for sort of the state run policy, because they wanted that a specific individual should be involved in this in the trafficking and production, and they would like to not only try to ban the narcotics in the field, and they wanted to to increase the price at the international market. When there would be some bans on the production or on the cultivations, and definitely that would be the implication of that would be like the price rise. So that's why they've tried to do in that regard. So then I will move to the executive summary. So the Taliban consolidation and not eliminating the drugs and narcotics, because they try to manipulate the drug trade, and the small circle of the Taliban were allowed to take part in that, because these individuals are not only connecting to the Afghan Taliban government, and at the same time they are also connected to the Pakistani intelligence organizations or networks. That is on the top is the ISI, and then of course the other regional country which is somehow supporting this network is the IRGC, the Iranian Guard, or the National Guard, is also involved in this criminal state ecosystem, or transnational criminal ecosystem. So we move to the part of the structure. So I would like to explain that how they use this and the structure. So they eliminated the competitors who were able to compete with the Taliban and also with these specific leaders. So that is why the most emphasis was placed on the people who were able to provide this opportunity. So on the top of this is the person is the Haji Salim, is the cartel in Pakistan, and also the other people are involved in this whole procedure. So the other issues that I would like to discuss is the drug revenue and mining sector. So of course, this revenue is supporting the political protections and also the international legitimacy, providing international legitimacy. This is the model of how this industry mask the illicit revenue, and they provide this revenue to the state. So these systems, they work like the mining sectors they provide, then the industry they invest in it, and also the construction and logistic firms they provide, and also the laundering and concealment and political protection. So the significant hub for that is the UAE, which provide all these possibility for this illicit trade, and also exchange of all these details, and exchange of all this money and whatsoever. And then these channels are, as I said, including like the construction companies and the logistic firms, and export and import companies. The main hub of that is Dubai, which provides these linkages to the Afghans and also the Iranians and Pakistanis. The person who is on the top, which runs the whole scenario or runs the whole procedure, is Haji Bashar Nurzai. He often travels to the UAE, and he is in contact with not only the Pakistanis, with the Iranians and other players in the region. So that's the way that they are working on this on the whole procedure. And as I said, there are some other individuals. Like Haji Ihsanullah Alizai as well. He is collaborating with this network, and the whole procedure they are involved in that. And then I would like to move to the additional Taliban approved traffickers. They are like Watanaji, Haji Bata, Mullah Abdul Qadir, and then Khan, Haji Azizullah Alizai, and Haji Muhammad Alizai, and Haji Sharifullah Qayyum. They are the other people who are approved by the Taliban that they could move the drugs and narcotics, and also to be involved with the regional players, the Pakistani and the Iranians, and also the international drug dealers. The Taliban, they have also like specific commanders of the Taliban are also supporting the whole process, not only supporting the process, but they have a significant role in it. these people are maintaining the relationship with the Pakistanis and the Iranians, and also facilitate the narcotics movement to the global markets. These commanders, they control the area where, or these borders where these drugs are from the production areas and then to the international markets. They are controlling. That's why they provide these facilities for the drug dealers. It means the commanders, they are also involved somehow in facilitations and also coordinations with the cartels, with the ISI, and also with the Iranian National Guard. The specific person in this context which I would like to emphasize is Mullah Abdul Qayyum Zakir, who is the Deputy Defense Minister, and also the founder of the Nur Qayyum company. It's a chemical transport cover. It has a sort of a chemical, but he has this is only a cover for the drugs and narcotics, or the illicit economy in the country. So he is exporting poppy and heroin to Europe, and also the other person who is also involved in this process is the Sheikh Abdul Hakim Isaaqzai, who is this Supreme Court Chief Justice, unfortunately. And they producing and also in smuggling all these materials. And then of course there's another person, the Haji Jan, is also linked to the Iranian National Guard Quds Force unit. And also there are some other people from Mexico, Venezuela, and from Balkans are also involved in this in all this scenario. Then another person I would like to emphasize is the Maulavi Muhammad Yusuf Wafa, who is the governor for Mazar Sharif or Balkh province, who has a very close relationship with the supreme leader of the Taliban. And he is from Kandahar, from the Nurzai tribe. The Nurzai tribe is nowadays in Afghanistan. They have significant privilege and support from the Taliban supreme leader. And of course, as many of the Taliban commanders and top tier, they are somehow or one way or the other connected to the Pakistani intelligence services, and on the top is the ISI. And this specific relationship make it for them to collaborate as much as possible, and specifically in the area where the Baloch Liberation is operating, and the Balochistan Corps is operating there. And then Maulvi Muhammad Fazil, who is also the Deputy Minister of the Defense, and also was and currently the Minister of the Transport and Civil Aviation. He is from Uruzgan, and he also is part of the greater market in the region, and also beyond that. Then I will move to the South Asian Trafficking Convergence, which is the Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran network. They're collaborating very, very closely. The maritime pirates, and then jihadi organizations, state military institutions. They are actually the key enabling of them, or enabler, are the Pakistani ISI, the Afghan Taliban, the Iranian National Guard, and some of the military entities in Turkey, Belarus, Mexico, Venezuela, and the United States. There are some documents which shows that how the state assists the whole narco-terrorism or the illicit economy in the region. So I collected some data. However, they are in Pashto or Dari. I cannot translate it in words to words. But what we see here, they are providing like the permission to some of the companies who are involved in this whole scenario. The ISI is also approved the specific people to run this network and also the poppy cultivation. So the ISI from opium cultivations and then to the heroin processing labs in Balochistan, and also they do all these procedures to support Jaish-e-Mohammed and also Lashkar-e-Taiba. So the drug and narco-terrorism or the illicit economy somehow supports the ISI projects in Kashmir and also in some of the other areas, and particularly in Indian Kashmir. So the key people who are supported by the Pakistani intelligence is, of course, these three guys. One is the Haji Faizullah Khan Gulabzai, and then Haji Mullah Kakozai and Haji Khan Ghalbizi. These people, they are supported by the Pakistani intelligence, who are sharing or having connections with the Afghan Taliban and also with the Iranian National Guard. And of course, this is about the sometimes or a lot of time the drugs are exchanged with a weapon, or weapons are exchanged with the drugs, and this is the way that a lot of these drugs are provided for the Taliban or for anybody else who has this possibility or reach out to the weapons. The most of the weapons, they're the M16s rifles of the Americans, and also M4 rifles. And then even thermal weapons, they have the access to, and then they provide this drugs, and in return they get the weaponry. So these weaponry or these weapons are then moved to or transferred to the terrorist organizations, or some of the insurgent organizations are operating in the region. As we talked before, how the Iranians or the National Guards, they are operating in this whole scenario. The top people that the information shows, the Commander Ali Hossein Rezavi, who is the senior commander in Iran's naval forces, and also this guy is providing all the opportunity to when the Afghan drugs are moved to reportedly to Pakistan or directly to Iran, and then from there these drugs are transported by the fishing vessels and other commercial ships to the Middle East and Africa and also European countries. Then we have, of course, the international Carter cooperations in this whole scenario. As I said, the Venezuelan, they're people from Mexico and Balkan. From Venezuela, the Hector Sajan and also Carlos Mayora, and then of course from Mexico, Rafael and then from Mexico as well, Joseph Antonio, and also from Balkan is the Nasser Kalmidi, who are reportedly collaborating with this the whole procedure. And of course, the implications that we have in this whole system of the drugs and narcotics is that the Taliban supported specific organizations and specific networks, and as a result, and we see that how the insurgency and how the militancy is transferred to the other areas in the region, and that is really a complicated situation that we have to deal with. And of course, that needs the international collaboration, and not only the international collaboration, but the regional countries that should have, as the professor before said, that they have to collaborate on this basis, that how to tackle the whole scenario, because the drugs dealers and also the nexus between the drug dealers and also the terrorist organizations, and then we have the state players. That is really a complicated situation. That's why there is a need for a multinational collaboration, specifically Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and other countries in the region, and of course, and particularly Iran should be also involved in this scenario. So I have the for the policy implications. I have some suggestions. So how we could counter or monitor the financial channels in the UAE, and then also the labs of the drugs and narcotics in Balochistan and Pakistan, and also Afghanistan, and then the maritime routes are controlled by the Iranian National Guard. And also, there's a need of the intelligence sharing. As the professor before said, there's an intelligence need for sharing between these countries. However, there are some doubts of collaborations, but still, we have to focus on how we share intelligence and to tackle these complications. And of course, there should be more focus on mining and trafficking, where these mining industries in Afghanistan, or probably in Pakistan, how they are working together for illicit businesses, or how can I say, the economy which is run in the region. So, and then there should be how we should address this chain, as some of the colleagues said about the meth, and also fentanyl. All these should be tackled, and then should be a best possible way to deal with. And of course, thank you very much for your time. And if there would be some questions, and I'm open for the questions. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ajmal Sohail, for a very, very elaborative and excellent presentation, and especially bringing in the links between drug traffickers, the organized criminals, the money launderers, the terrorists. So all of them, and very rightly you said, they collaborate with each other despite living in so-called enemy countries. So their cooperation does not recognize the borders. They cooperate with each other amongst themselves. Their money moves from one jurisdiction to another without stopping anywhere. Within flash of seconds, they move from one to another, but our law enforcement stops at the frontiers. That is the biggest challenge. And intelligence sharing is also a very big challenge because many times the organizations, even within their own country, do not share intelligence with each other because who gets the credit? That is ultimate reality. The same thing is with international cooperation. I worked with Interpol for 3 years, so I know that how cooperating one country with the other at times is a challenge. Thank you very much for your presentation. So with this, now we finally turn to the human dimension of this issue, which is often overlooked. So Ambassador M. Ashraf Hydri will shed light on the link between drug economies, forced migration, refugee vulnerability, and addiction. A bit of introduction about Ambassador Hydri. He is an Afghan diplomat and president of Displaced International. He served as Afghanistan's ambassador to Sri Lanka between 2018 and 2022 and Director General at SACEP, advancing regional cooperation on security, climate, and development. His previous roles include senior positions in Afghanistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Deputy Chief of Mission to India, and assignments in Washington, D.C. He holds a Master's in Security Studies from Georgetown University. Over to you, Ambassador Hydri. Just we have to keep that in mind that yours being the last one. So it will be really appreciated if you could finish it in between 13 to 15 minutes. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much. That's what I will exactly do. It's also quite late here. I've been up since 2 in the morning now. It's almost 5 a.m. or so. Anyways, good afternoon, distinguished colleagues, respected organizers and friends. It's really an honor to join you this important international conference on countering narco-terrorism. I thank the ENDIC Researchers Forum and Avalon Intelligence for bringing us together around an issue of growing regional and global consequence. We often discuss narcotics in the language of seizures, trafficking routes, we just heard, criminal syndicates, and profits. We discuss terrorism in the language of financing, recruitment, and destabilization. And we discuss forced migration in the language of borders, displacement figures, and humanitarian needs. But for millions of displaced people, these are not separate issues. They converge in refugee communities where trauma goes untreated, in black markets where despair is monetized, and in the lives of people who flee war and persecution only to confront addiction, exploitation, and abandonment and exile. That's the nexus I wish to address today, the relationship between drug production, forced migration, refugee vulnerability, and addiction. My central argument is simple. If we fail to address addiction and displaced populations, we are not only failing morally, we are also deepening the very instability we claim to fight. Today, more than 117 million people worldwide are forcibly displaced. While reliable global data on illicit drug addiction among displaced populations remain limited, the best available evidence suggests that substance misuse can intensify in settings shaped by trauma, exclusion, and weak access to care. That data gap should not reassure us, it should concern us, because what we can already see is serious enough. Forced displacement strips people of the basic protections that allow them to survive hardship with dignity, livelihood, legal status, community, continuity, and access to care. The displaced do not arrive in exile as blank slates. They arrive carrying trauma, grief, humiliation, debt, uncertainty, and fear. Many live in legal ambiguity for years. Many are shut out of formal labor markets. Many endure discrimination, chronic stress, and social isolation. In such conditions, addiction does not emerge in a vacuum. It grows where despair is abundant, and narcotics are cheap, especially in the region where Afghanistan is situated. This is why many displaced people who fall into substance dependency become double victims. They're first uprooted by war, repression, persecution, poverty, and state collapse, as we've known from Afghanistan. Then they're consumed by a second form of violence, addiction driven by dispossession, unemployment, untreated trauma, and abandonment. The second violence is quieter than war, but it is no less destructive. It damages the individual, weakens the family, strains already fragile communities, and creates openings for exploitation by traffickers, smugglers, organized criminal networks, and in some context, extremist actors. This is exactly where the humanitarian and security dimensions meet. Untreated addiction in displaced communities is not merely a private tragedy. It can become a public health crisis, a social fracture, and a security risk. It can fuel petty crime, deepen family breakdown, increase exploitation, and draw vulnerable people into illicit economies tied to organized crime and terror finance. If we do not address addiction in refugee settings, we are not containing instability, we are allowing it to grow. The no case illustrates this more clearly than that of Afghan refugees and migrants in Iran and Pakistan. For decades, Afghans have lived through repeated cycles of war, displacement, return, and renewed dispossession. Millions have sought refuge in neighboring countries under conditions ranging from precarious hospitality to outright hostility. Many have worked hard, supported families, and contributed meaningfully to the economies of their host countries. Yet too many have also lived on the margins, underpaid, stigmatized, monitored, and denied genuine stability. This matters greatly in the context of narcotics. Afghanistan has long been associated with one of the world's largest opium economies, which our colleague just discussed. Even as production patterns have changed, the wider illicit infrastructure around drugs has not simply disappeared, it has adapted. The smuggling routes remain active, black markets endure, synthetic drugs are increasingly part of the picture, and the consequences continue to spill across borders. For many Afghan refugees, especially poor and unemployed young men, illicit drugs can become dangerously accessible. They're cheap, they're circulating in informal markets, they offer temporary escape from humiliation, loneliness, boredom, and despair. But what begins as escape often becomes dependency, and dependency becomes vulnerability of another kind. A refugee struggling with addiction may be more easily recruited as a courier, manipulated by traffickers, drawn into petty criminality, or trapped in the overlap between migrant precarity and organized illicit networks. In such cases, the refugee is no longer only a victim of displacement, he becomes exposed to a wider architecture of criminal exploitation. This is, we know, not an abstract, it is a lived reality in communities where desperation is chronic and protection is thin. So we must also speak honestly about what happens when addicted refugees encounter punitive systems rather than humane ones. In Iran, Afghan migrants and refugees caught up in drug-related offenses have often faced severe punishment under conditions where legal protection, due process, and access to rehabilitation are deeply unequal. For the poor, the undocumented, the stigmatized addiction is too often treated not as a medical and psychosocial condition, but as a criminal identity. This is a serious human rights concern. When vulnerable Migrants are imprisoned, brutalized, or otherwise punished without meaningful access to treatment or legal recourse. Such responses do not dismantle the deeper narcotics economy. They simply push suffering downward onto the most disposable lives within it. And deportation is not a solution here. For many returning Afghans, the outlook is bleak. They're sent back to a country under the Taliban, we know, marked by extreme economic hardship, weak health systems, inadequate rehabilitation services, and very limited opportunities for reintegration. And Taliban rule, treatment is often coercive, under-resourced, or shaped more by punishment than care. And instead of recovery, many encounter relapse, neglect, and renewed exclusion. And then there is the cruelest reality of all. Even spaces meant for healing are not safe always. The recent bombing of a rehab center housing Afghan addicts stands as a devastating symbol of how unprotected these lives have become. A placement for treatment became a place of mass casualty. A place of recovery became another battlefield. That is not only a tragedy, it is morally indicting. It tells us that for too many displaced Afghans, there is no true sanctuary, not in flight, not in exile, and not even in recovery. For a conference like this devoted to countering narco-terrorism, the lesson is clear. We cannot treat refugee addiction as peripheral to security. It is central to it. A displaced population with untreated trauma, blocked livelihoods, and easy access to black market drugs becomes fertile ground for exploitation, not because refugees are threats, but because vulnerable people are targeted by those who are traffickers understand vulnerability, organized crime studies vulnerability, extremist ecosystems exploit vulnerability, and when states and institutions fail to intervene early with protection, treatment, livelihoods, and legal safeguards, criminal actors fill the vacuum. That's why the connection between narcotics and migration must be understood, not only in terms of border crossing, but in terms of human weakening. The drug economy does not merely move substances, it reshapes incentives, fractures families, extracts labor, and turns despair into profit, and the burden is not shared equally. It falls most heavily on those who are already displaced, marginalized, and politically voiceless. So what must be done? And I'll be quick. First, we need an integrated policy framework, linking counter-narcotics, refugee protection, and public health. These cannot remain separate silos. Addiction in displaced settings must be treated as both a humanitarian emergency and a frontline prevention issue in the struggle against organized crime and narco-terror networks. Second, refugee and returnee settings must include serious investment in rehabilitation, psychosocial care, and trauma-informed treatment, not symbolic services, real services, accessible services, sustained services. Third, we must expand livelihood and inclusion programs for displaced populations. Work is not merely economic relief. In these contexts, it is protection. It restores dignity, reduces desperation, and narrows the space in which traffickers recruit. Fourth, governments must ensure that addicted refugees and migrants are met with rights-based responses, not indiscriminate punishment, imprisonment without rehabilitation, or execution. Unfortunately, in the case of most Afghan refugees in Iran, without recourse is not tragedy, it's failure disguised as a strength. Fifth, regional actors, humanitarian agencies, public health institutions, and counter-narcotics bodies must cooperate far more closely across borders, as it was mentioned. The same corridors that carry narcotics often intersect with irregular migration routes. Intelligence sharing, prevention, early intervention, and safe referral systems must be built together not separately. And finally, we must defend one simple principle. A refugee battling addiction is not an enemy to be discarded. He is not collateral. She's not a nuisance to be pushed out of sight. They're human beings standing at the point where conflict, displacement, crime, and neglect collide. If we save them, we do more than rescue lives. We also weaken the ecosystems that feed on their despair. So let me close with this. Every untreated refugee addict represents more than personal suffering. It represents a policy failure, a protection failure, a public health failure, and ultimately a security failure. If we continue to fight narcotics while ignoring the shattered social worlds in which addiction takes root, we will remain trapped in a cycle of reaction rather than prevention. But if we act with moral clarity and strategic seriousness, if we protect the displaced, treat addiction, restore livelihoods, and disrupt trafficking networks together, then we begin to close one of the most dangerous gaps in our regional response. The struggle against narco-terrorism will not be won by force alone. It will also be won by whether we can reduce the supply of despair. And I think that's very important, whether we can reduce the supply of despair on which criminal networks depend. That's why this issue matters. That's why refugee protection matters. And that's why the most humane response may also be the most strategic one. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ashraf Hydari. You have brought out this brilliant dimension, the human dimension, and the link between drug economies, forced migration, refugee vulnerability, and addiction, reminding us that this issue is not only about security, but also about human beings and the communities. Thank you very much for that. Sorry, Rajas, you have any question, or should I first close and you? We can have a question first, one question at least.
Yes, sir. We have two questions in the chat box. I'll read it out.
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So first question is there a robust solution to address the conflict in the region permanently without putting our national territorial integrity at peril when there is absence of political will? When there is absence of political will. So this question
is for everybody, but let me take it to Professor Rohan Gunaratna and Rami Desai, because at present they are very much currently in the area. So starting with Professor Gunaratna briefly, and then over to the Rami Desai.
Political will is the most important component to address such challenges. But you also need far-reaching leaders who can shake hands with people whom you don't like, but for the greater good of humanity. So I believe that we should build leaders at all levels. In our academies, we should train not only law enforcement, military, and national security leaders, but also peacemakers, people who are skilled in negotiation, arbitration, and mediation. We ourselves have to prepare those leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Rami. Yeah.
So thank you for passing the question on to me. I think it's a great question because I agree with my previous panelists that we have to build leadership. You know, I am seeing the question in the chat box and it says, how can we avoid putting our national territorial integrity at peril? And I think it's very important to instill the repercussions of any sort of stakeholding in this illicit activity on the populations that stay on the borders. I think it's very important for these populations to be aware what the repercussions are, but also to have very strong nationalist sentiments, because eventually they are the ones who are at the forefront of countering any sort of activity, transnational illicit activity. Number two, I think even while there is political will in some places, it is important for us to engage with all stakeholders across the borders as well. And it has to be tailor-made, sir. I don't think it can be one shoe fits all. We have to see, negotiations cannot be based on what we have to offer all the time. It also has to be based on what they can offer us, So therefore, I think that sort of engagement is very important. But to have that engagement, as the professor said very correctly, you also have to include scholarship, and because scholarship can give an angle that maybe the armed forces can't, and armed forces can give an angle that scholarship cannot. So I think we have to take everybody on board and have tailor-made approaches to every stakeholder in the region.
Thank you very much, Rami. Is absolutely, both of you have nailed it. So leaving nothing for me to add to that. So Rajas, is there any next question?
Yes, so there is
Because
another
I don't
question.
want to be, I have been given time up to 3:10. So I will take only 1 minute late towards the end just for closing. Okay, go
Yes.
ahead.
Yes, if the very purpose for against whom we make joint operations get to know about the operation details when work together, doesn't that defeat the purpose of conducting operations, especially when it comes to Pakistan? In that case, is it really workable option? It's open to all panelists.
Open to all. So any volunteer from the panel? Because I don't want to monopolize on that. So first I ask any volunteer on that. Okay, please go ahead.
So India-Pakistan relationship has to improve. China-India relationship has to improve. China and India were friends for 2,500 years before the 1962 border war. They were very close. China gave a great gift. India gave a great gift to China, which is Buddhism, through the Fergana Valley. So I want you to know that it's a very short period. These animosities, angers have persisted, but it requires a leader with a deep vision and a lot of courage to work together. So I believe that it is coming to a point where Pakistan has suffered so much from terrorism that they will have to work with India, and India will also have to work with Pakistan, because the threat of terrorism is going through the roof. The TTP, like the Afghan Taliban created the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, TTP will create the Islamic Emirate of Pakistan, and the nuclear weapons will fall to their hands. So it is better for India and Pakistan to work together on the terrorism front. Otherwise, it will overwhelm both Pakistan and eventually it will affect India also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Rohan Gunaratna. Really, it is very enlightening, and both the questions both of you have taken very well. So I will not add anything, even though I have been in all those regions, spent quite significant time in Northeast, all of that, including undercover operations in Myanmar. Then Afghanistan, have traveled all over. So to most of the regions and almost wherever conflict is, I have been there. So just to finish it, because we are running out of time, so I will just go to the formality type closing, not actually summing up what it is. So as we conclude this session, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all our speakers for their deeply insightful and enriching contributions. Today's discussion has provided us with a comprehensive understanding of the Golden Triangle as a complex and evolving nexus of narcotics production, conflict dynamics, transnational crime, and regional security challenges. What clearly emerges is that the Golden Triangle challenge is multidimensional. It cannot be addressed through isolated or purely enforcement-driven approaches. It requires coordinated regional cooperation, stronger institutional responses, intelligence sharing, and a balanced strategy that integrates security, governance, and humanitarian considerations. I extend my heartfelt thanks to our distinguished speakers, my friend General Shokin Chauhan, Professor Rohan Gunaratna, Mr. Ajmal Sohail, Mr. Rami Desai, and Ambassador Ashraf Hydari for sharing their expertise and perspectives. I would also like to thank the audience for the active engagement which has greatly enriched this session. As we close, I hope today's discussion serves as a stepping stone towards deeper collaboration and more effective responses to one of the most pressing and complex challenges facing our region, and that we do not stop at the frontiers. We take the fight up to them. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a very good day, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. And I pass it on back to Indik for the next session. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Harjit, Sandhu, sir, and all the esteemed panelists. The session was really very insightful and informative. Audience, with this, we have come to an end of this session. I would like to request all the members to please stay connected for our upcoming sessions. Thank you.